What's up guys, Alex here from FIFA Scouting Tips and welcome to part 6 of the FIFA 15 Scouting Guide. Today we're going to have a look at developing your youth players once you've promoted them from the academy. Before I get started, just want to say thanks again to everyone who's been entering the competition for showing off your best youth player. Please do keep the entries coming. We've got some really great players being submitted here. Love seeing how good your players are and the best players you can find, so keep that coming. All the ways you can submit on social media will be in the description, so check that out. And without further ado, let's get on with the video. So today I'm going to be testing out a few things, a few different ways you can improve your youth players once they're promoted. And first of all, I'm going to compare whether it's best to send them out on loan for a season or keep them in your team. So what we have here, we've got the 3 players which I promoted in the last video. They all have potential to be special, so it's not like any of them are going to grow way more than the others because they have high potential, so they should all be fairly even, hopefully. And like I said, we'll try out those 2 different methods, see which is the most effective. I do warn you though that loaning out your players in the first window after they've been promoted is pretty much impossible, because the game thinks that you've bought them from another team and therefore bars you from selling them, from loaning them out, which is a bit annoying. But so it means that you have to wait a while before you can actually loan them out. So what I'm going to do is, first season I'm going to keep them in the squad, see how much they grow, and then the second season I'm going to loan them out, and then we can compare the growth in each season. So without further ado, let's get on with it and see how they did after a season of growth in my squad. Okay, so here are the players after 1 full season of growth in the Barcelona squad. We got the goalkeeper here, only grown 1 point, but actually that's, if you think back to FIFA 14, goalkeepers rarely grew before they were about 22 or 23 years old. So he's grown 1 point when he's 18, so actually that's a bit of a positive sign, I suppose. He played 22 games, which is a lot. This is just simmed through the whole season. This is what the computer did. Played him 22 times, only grew 1 point, but he's growing in all his goalkeeper stats, which is good. That didn't really happen much last year. Until they're about 22 or 23, so it's a positive start, I suppose. The other 2 players grown 3 points each, which is great. That's the most out of any player on the entire squad, which is good. As you can see here, this player has grown really evenly across the board. His defensive stats grown slightly more, which is very encouraging. Physical stats haven't grown at all. That's a bit worrying. Not so much a worry with this player because he's already got really good physical stats, but this guy is a bit of a worry, and that's another problem which has plagued FIFA versions. The young players' physical stats just do not grow until they're a bit older, and that's another thing I'm going to be testing out today, as well as seeing whether they grow most on loan or on the squad. Do their physical stats grow, and how long will it take till they start growing? So it's just worth noting that like I said, I simmed this through the whole time, but I also tested it a few other times as well, and these 2 players grew roughly 2 or 3 points each time. Goalkeeper grew about 1 point most of the time. I think once he grew 2 points, but I tested it loads of times, and these seem to be fairly average compared to the other tests that I did. So that is, they have some decent growth, not amazing, but considering it's the best growth on the squad, that's not bad at all. But the main point, I suppose, is that physical stats do not seem to be growing unless they're a goalkeeper, where they're not actually that much use. So let's jump straight in and see how that compares to when they spent a season on loan. Okay, so this is the outcome from sending my players out on loan for the season rather than keeping them in the squad. And with the 2 outfield players here, we can see they've both grown 3 points again. Again, they have very nice overall growth in their stats. Once again, this player here grew the most in defensive stats, so that's going to go very nicely over time, and he's going to catch up with his attacking stats. Now what I wanted to do was I wanted to send them to a variety of different clubs to see what difference that would make. So I sent this player here to Manchester United, where he might struggle to get into the first team with his starting overall. Sent my other outfield player here to Leicester City, where he's had a much better chance of getting into the starting lineup, and I sent my goalkeeper to a club in the same division as me to see what kind of difference that would make. And as you can see here, he hasn't grown at all. So that first season where he grew a point, I don't know if that was just a one-off or what, but he didn't grow at all when he was out on loan. He grew in physical stats and mental stats, but nothing in goalkeeper stats. So it seems like that problem with goalkeepers not growing when they're young hasn't been shaken off entirely. I am going to do more testing, and I'm going to show you the results later of when goalkeepers do start to grow. So keep watching and I'll show you that. One thing to bear in mind is that it can be very difficult to loan out your young players, even if you might have some of the best young players in the world. Quite often teams don't come in and take them. So what I recommend doing is saving at the start of the week when your players are all put up for loan, and if you get to the end of the week and you haven't had an offer, just load back that week and try again. So I'd recommend you don't actually play the games, just sim them, otherwise it's going to take a very long time. But it needs a bit of patience, and it is pretty boring, to be honest, but it is the only way you're going to guarantee your players get out on loan. So once you do get a player out on loan, save your game, and then that will be your new starting point. Sim forward another week and see if you can get the others out on loan. Do it that way and you will eventually get them out on loan. So as we can see here, it doesn't seem to make a difference whether the player is sent to a lower rated team or a top notch team. They will still grow nicely, and those 10 games played there, that was actually on my squad before he was loaned out. Although I think Champions Cup, it might actually be counted the Manchester United games in that as well. So I know he played about 2 games before he got sent out on loan, so I think it counts those. But when you send players out to teams that aren't in your league and that don't play in the same cup, so Manchester United playing in the Champions Cup was the slight exception there, but with this player here, no games in the Spanish League, obviously, no games in the Champions Cup. What the growth does in the game is it basically sets to default as far as I can tell. So it grows a fairly standard amount in order to help him reach his potential within a reasonable number of years, yeah, as a one way of putting it. So what you might want to do, if you feel like you can grow your players more, don't send them out on loan, keep them in your squad, give them lots of game time, get them into good ratings, because when they're on a team who isn't in the same league as you, doesn't play any similar cups, then they, like I said, they seem to grow a standard rate. They don't have any form ratings, or it just stays as okay. Whereas if you feel like you can keep your players on your squad and you can make them grow better, then they will get into better form and they should grow more. So that's that's the major difference, I think, between keeping your players on your squad and sending them out on loan. The other thing which is related to that is sending players on loan to teams in your own league, like this player here. Then they do get affected by form, and so if you send them to a team which is likely to get relegated, they might get into bad form and then they won't grow anywhere near as much. So that is one thing to bear in mind. If you do want to send them out on loan, try not to send them to teams in your league. So like I said, I will now show you how long it takes before young goalkeepers start to grow. If we look at the stats here, no more physical growth again, so I will show you as well when you can expect your players to start growing physically as well. So stay tuned for that now. Right, let's have a look at goalkeeper growth and physical stat growth. Now I've simmed through about, I think it's 7 or 8 seasons. The goalkeeper here is 24 years old. He has grown 2 points. And in previous seasons he did grow, he grew 1 point I think the season before when he was 23, but before that I had several seasons where he just did not grow a single overall point at all. He was growing some points in goalkeeping, but it was only about 1 point each in each goalkeeper stat. Grew plenty of physical stats, but that was about it really. So quite often with goalkeepers you have to wait until they're in their early to mid 20s, 22, 23, 24, that sort of age, until they start growing properly. That was true with FIFA 14 and it's true this year as well, as you can see, which is a bit of a letdown, but it does get better. They do start growing, and the good thing about goalkeepers is they can keep growing when they're a bit older. So if you have a look here at the other goalkeeper on the squad, 33 years old, and he's still grown 2 points this season as well. So it is possible for them to keep growing when they're a bit older than outfield players. So they seem to start growing later, but then they'll keep growing later as well. Now let's have a look at physical stat growth. Let's move down here to the striker I have here. As you can see, no growth there physically at all. I think last season he did grow a few points physically, but it was only a couple. And the other player, the fullback, if we look here, he hasn't grown at all physically. With him it doesn't really matter so much because he's just so good. But with other players like that striker, where they're not so good physically, it can make a big difference. Now, it's not all bad news. I brought in some other players, some regens, that kind of thing, to see how they grew physically in comparison. As you can see here, this player has grown really well physically, and this player didn't grow so well. Some players didn't grow at all physically, as you can see here. This one didn't grow at all. So physical growth with youth players and sort of regens, creative players, that sort of thing, they seem to be extremely random. One season they may grow physically quite well, the next season they may not grow a single stat physically. So it's really hard to tell whether they're going to grow physically. So Yeah, so if you have players who come out of the academy with decent physical stats, it may not be such a problem. But if you do find players who are not so good physically, you may have a problem on your hands. I have heard that physically strong players do grow physically a bit earlier. We can only hope this is correct across the board. But as you can see from my tests here, physical growth was very random indeed. Some players grew, some players didn't at all. Right, for the final thing in today's video, I want to show you one way that you can improve your loaned players' potential, your youth players' potential, once you've promoted them from the academy. And as we saw in the last video, when you promote players, you can actually change their potential, you can improve it, or it can also go down. And the same is true once you have promoted them. So we have here our players. They've been out on loan for half the season. If we look on the main screen, we can see it's on the 1st of January in the winter transfer window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recall them, and then we will see how their potential has changed. Remember, they all started with has potential to be special, which is the highest potential possible. So let's see what happens. So we're going to recall them all one by one, and then once that is done, we will go and hover over them. An exciting prospect, has potential to be special, and exciting prospect. So these two here, the goalkeeper and the striker, their potential has gone down. They used to be has potential to be special, now it's an exciting prospect. And what I did was I did a load of testing. Once I'd done this, I then sent them off on loan again in the very same January window, and then recalled them straight away, and their potential had gone back up to has potential to be special, like this player here. So what this means in principle is that potentials are still very flexible, and you can still change them by loaning your players out. And I know I've seen some people say that they couldn't get it to work. I think maybe they were just unlucky. It may need a lot of attempts. I was fairly lucky in that it worked pretty much straight first time with me. But as you can see with that little demonstration there, it does change your player's potential. So what you can do is, if you have a player that says showing great potential, you could send them out on loan, bring them back, and they'll have an exciting prospect. Send them out on loan again in the same window, bring them back straight away, and they could have has potential to be special. So within a couple of weeks, you can boost their potential right up from showing great potential to has potential to be special. And I know that you can also do this if a player has fairly high potential in the 70s, but it hasn't cracked over 80 yet, so they don't have the showing great potential message. You can push them up so they do have that message, and from there you can kick on and improve it again. So you can improve the potentials like this with the loan trick. It does still work, and that is a great way to improve your player growth, because with higher potential they're going to grow more because they have a higher potential to reach. So that's a great way to develop your youth players once they are promoted. Loan them out, recall them straight away, and see how their potential has changed. So I'd recommend you save your game before you recall them, just in case you don't get the message you're looking for, and then keep trying until you do get an improved potential message. And one more thing you may have noticed as well is that when you recall players like this, it resets their player growth count. So before we had +3 for some of the players, when they get recalled, it resets it to their current overall. So what this means is that you can basically grow players beyond the maximum growth per season. So there seems to be a maximum growth of about 5 or 6 points per season. If you have a player who has grown that much by the January window, just send him out on loan, recall him instantly, and his growth cut gets reset, and then you can keep him growing for the rest of the season, for the second half of the season. So this means that you can grow them massively, much beyond the 6 points total. You can grow them up a lot more than that. So that's one thing to bear in mind, and it's another good little bonus of sending your players out on loan and then recalling them. So hope that has helped you guys. I think I'm going to wrap it up there today. Don't forget to keep entering your best youth players into the competition. I really want to see how well you can do. Can you beat this player here, 77 at age 17? Yes, he's been developing a bit, but can you get a player like that out of the academy? If you can, I'd love to see it. Make sure you send a tweet at FIFA Scouting, or hit me up on the Facebook page, or leave a comment on the website or on the YouTube channel. All the links will be in the description. And make sure you leave a like if you thought this video was good, and keep sending me your suggestions. I'd love to hear them. And cheers, I'll leave it there for today, guys.